Welcome to the Ecommerce Marketing Podcast, the highly rated digital marketing podcast that provides weekly digital marketing tips and strategies from some of the world's top digital marketers and e-commerce entrepreneurs that will help you take your digital marketing to the next level. Sit back and enjoy this power-packed episode hosted by Arlen Robinson, who is an e-commerce entrepreneur and digital marketing expert with over 20 years of experience.
This message comes from our sponsor, AdScale. AdScale makes e-commerce advertising easy with automation and AI. AdScale connects to your store, helping you to create and manage ad campaigns across multiple channels in one place. From easy ad creation with 24/7 optimization to AI audience targeting and AI ad copy using integrated Chat GPT, AdScale provides everything you need to acquire more customers and increase their lifetime value. For more information, visit adscale.com.
Hey, e-commerce marketing podcast listener. Are you looking to increase traffic and sales to your website? You can do this by launching your own affiliate program. Just visit getosi.com and sign up for a free trial today. That's getosi.com. Now get ready to hear from your e-commerce marketing expert of the week as they drill down to give you details on marketing strategies that can help grow your business.
Welcome back to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast, everyone. My name is Arlen Robinson, and I am your host. And today we have a very special guest, Riki Hooker, who has over 25 years of overseas trade experience. He's built and scaled a dozen international businesses from manufacturing, distribution, online marketplaces, and e-commerce via the UK and Europe, APEC and North America, focusing on seamless trade routes and he's an expert in the myriad of cultural trading differences. Riki's joined Global E-commerce Experts in 2020 as the general manager to reinforce the team that grows e-commerce sellers into the UK and European Union. Now integral to the rollout of GEE's ambitious and industry disrupting global expansion strategy, Riki is applying more than 2 decades of award-winning international trade experience to scale online sellers around the world. Welcome to the podcast, Riki.
Wow, that was quite the intro. I when I read that, I didn't think it would be taking as long. Thank you, Arlen, for having me on. It's very cool to be here, and I gather I'm pretty close. We're pretty close to 300 episodes.
Yes, we are. I don't know if this one is going to be the 300th one, or if not, we're going to have some kind of celebration graphics or effects.
If I'd have known, I'd have brought a cake or something to celebrate. But congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's been quite a journey and a wonderful one as well. And so I've learned a ton in these 300 episodes, and I'm sure you're going to enlighten us even more, so kind of add to our whole repertoire of knowledge about e-commerce marketing. And so, basically today we're going to really be talking about an area we hadn't really discussed too much before on the podcast, but that's how you would expand into the European and UK markets. If you're a current seller, maybe you're just selling in the US or you're selling in some other markets and you're looking to expand in the European Union as well as the UK. And you're going to tell us a little bit how a brand will be able to do that effectively. And so, but before we do get into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and, specifically how you got into doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, thanks. So, I mean, as it was shared there in the bio piece, I've spent 25 years growing international businesses, and I've done kind of the hard graft of building organizations, both online and offline, initially pre-internet in manufacturing and distribution, B2B, building, dealer networks and distribution networks. And then as the internet took hold, more online channels and marketplaces. And I've done the kind of, as I say, the kind of that hard work of tripping, stumbling, falling, getting back up, finding out the hard way how to trade with people that are maybe not the same language, definitely not the same currency, and the nuances of trading internationally, but also the exciting piece of of beginning to trade kind of horizontally. Take the same products, take the same SKUs that you already know are successful, thing you're already an expert at, and then apply them to a different set of people rather than trying to constantly churn and trying to find something in the same place. So it's been, I've done it the hard way, pounding the pavements and building different businesses with various different degrees of success, lately more successful as I've grown wiser to what those pieces are. And then back 2020, I was asked to join Global E-commerce Experts to kind of apply that to other businesses and to kind of roll out some of that experience into this kind of expansion pathway that the business has got, which is this kind of well-trodden route of put these things into practice and you'll be able to go internationally. So it's been really exciting. And the next stages of the journey are more countries, more global, and a little bit more automation and the centralized portals and some other software pieces. So it's a really exciting organization. And as ever, e-commerce is a super exciting, industry to be in. So, I'm taking non-e-commerce, and then over the last 20 years, I've kind of applied that international side into e-com. So, that's how I found myself here.
Gotcha. Well, that's awesome. And thank you for sharing that and giving us the details about, how you got into, what you're doing today. And I think this whole conversation and everything that you've kind of mentioned in your journey to where you are is really just timely because, we're right now at a stage where we're really reaching a global economy, global world where, it's your products and services can now be accessible by really virtually anyone just because of all of the advancements that have gone on, the internet speeds, the ability to ship globally quite easily. All of these things have all come into play like never before. And, and also social media, I think, is also a key role in globalizing a company, globalizing cultures, and getting people from all over the world to experience what it is to be like if, let's say, you're in Europe or you're in the UK. What are the cultural norms? What are the types of products that people are familiar with, and what are the things that they're interested in? And so, all of this is kind of coming into play to, really give customers the ability to, to reach their world and further service and ship their products and services across the world. So it's really a good time that we're in right now. Very interesting. And I mentioned at the top of the episode, of course, we're talking about, really, how do you globalize? How do you access and get your products or your brand into the European markets, the UK? I guess the first question I have is really, before even looking to go that route, what are some initial things that a brand just needs to have in place at a bare minimum before they even consider getting into these markets?
Yeah, I mean, there's two routes that a seller typically finds themselves selling globally. They've either pushed out some content, YouTube, social media, TikTok, if they're particularly modern, and they find themselves as an accidental exporter. Right. They find out that they come into a bunch of orders in their inbox to different countries, so we get a bit of that. And that there's always a bit of fun there in terms of how you fulfill that from where you are. Maybe we'll touch on it a bit later, but for most sellers, there's a concerted desire. If they're an Amazon seller, maybe a global selling team or a rep tells them that that's it, you're doing a fantastic job, you should go international, or maybe that it's part of a structured plan. And those are the ones which are typically the most interesting because an organization or an e-commerce business has had a degree of success. They've started to do some of the right things in their home country. Doesn't matter where that is, and they decide that maybe they want to expand, and go outwards. From that point, there's really three things that we need to get a handle on. The first part is an understanding of the scale of what you're going to be doing. So are you want to be going to a country a multitude of countries, a geographic region, an idea of what you're letting yourself in for from an understanding perspective. So there's a degree of research and getting the background underpinning of what that is. The preparation part, which comes in understanding, will my products be right for another country? Are they, am I ready to be able to sell in those countries? Can I afford to sell in those places? You're always going to need more stock, for instance. And then finally, compliance. Those are the three pieces that you need to do right from the outset, the initial essential pieces. Do I register for taxes? How do I register for taxes? Who's going to handle that for me? Is my product allowed to be sold in that particular country? So, there's certain things. I was talking, I read this great article the other day about how something as simple as Gatorade in the US, people are drinking it all the time. And there's a particular one, I think it's a green one, it's the blue one. Anyway, there's one of them which is like totally illegal in the UK. It's not allowed. It's like, it's as taboo as Class A. You can't have it because it's got some kind of color in it that's been banned. There's certain nuances like that. I mean, those things are unusual, but that comes in the preparation. Can I? How will I? In essence, so those are the 3 points: understanding, preparation, compliance. Once you've done those three pieces, you're kind of good to go.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'm glad you simplified it, and that makes sense because if you can't sell it in that particular country or region, then you don't need to move any further. So that really needs to be step one. Can you sell it? And it's interesting that you mentioned that there's certain things, like you said, down to even just, like you said, in the Gatorade example, down to just the color of that particular brand, flavor of Gatorade just can't be sold in the UK for whatever reason because it was banned. So it's very, very interesting. So
it's unusual. It's unusual. Generally, it's okay.
Generally it is. So, but it just kind of goes to the fact that you definitely want to do your due diligence and decide where you want to go. And it's not just like you're blindly you come up to a map with a blindfold on and you're just throwing darts. It's you don't want to go that route. You want to be a little
the cool thing here is that you can do that from home. You can do that from your desk. You haven't got to move away from your desk. You haven't got to travel around to understand the most of that. And even from a compliance perspective, you're going to spend a few $100 on understanding whether you need to be compliant, what kind of tax registrations you need. We're not talking about a huge amount of money at this stage, to get to understand what the scale of the opportunity is.
True. Well, that's really good to know. Now, if I put myself in the shoes of an e-commerce brand, e-commerce seller, and I'm thinking about going down this route, so let's say I've gone through that first step. I've done the due diligence. I've gone through, those 3 points, and I've figured out my area. I know it's possible to sell. I've covered some of the major issues as far as taxes. I got a handle on that. I think the next question that comes to my mind as an e-commerce seller would then be shipping. If I'm in the U.S. and I have a product that has to be sold, that has to be actually shipped out, and I need to ship it to the UK or any other European country, how really does an e-commerce brand figure out the best method for them that's going to be as cost effective as possible, but yet is going to be as timely as possible for that end customer to get their product? Because I think that's really going to be a big concern.
Yeah, and I think there's one piece on the end there, Alan, which is desirability from a buyer's perspective. That, you can present something for sale, and you could even make it, make it available in a ready time frame. But online buyers are very savvy, around the world, and they get a sense of, what am I doing here? What am I letting myself in for? What am I putting my credit card into for here? So I think that some of that is related around the shipping, but I think the cost-effective shipping, there's going to be various ways you can go about doing it. If you're based in the US, for instance, or you're based in APEC and maybe in Australia, and you want to start servicing orders overseas, you're going to need to decide, am I or am I not going to trade in the local currency or my own currency? Right. And again, that might change the desirability of the buyer. Do I want to buy this in a foreign currency? Do I want to cover Forex risk? Can I do that? You're also going to need to take consideration of a language. I mean, you can come and sell in the UK because broadly speaking, that there's going to be an understanding of the language from a US perspective or an Australian perspective, for instance. But quite how you'll rank or your success in France or Germany or in a non-English speaking country from a EU perspective, those things are certainly going to be going to make a lot of difference. So we'll perhaps touch on those pieces later on, because this is about cost-effective shipping. You can either drop ship your goods from wherever you are into the country, and then the buyer could take consideration of importation duties, taxes, that kind of stuff. Or you can house your goods locally in a region, and that's where the most cost-effective shipping comes from. The most successful e-commerce sellers in the UK and the EU will have some stock housed in a 3PL in the UK and a 3PL in the EU. And that will handle all of the other European countries. And those people will be able to offer, broadly speaking, next day delivery in the UK and next day delivery in the northeastern part for our 3PL, northeastern part of Europe, and maybe 2 to 3 days, maybe a little bit longer than that in some of the more far reaching locations. So the key thing here is considering that you're probably going to need to have some stock, some of your own property within the region. Now, if you're an Amazon seller, you can stick that stuff into FBA in those different countries. Hey, no problem. If you're a D2C seller and you're selling directly off your own website, you're going to need to make those arrangements yourself. Either way, you've got to buy more stock. So providing cost-effective shipping is shipping in bulk for container loads, not sending things one by one, and housing some stock within the region. Those are the two biggest pieces for cost-effective shipping, in essence.
Gotcha. That sounds great. Now, as far as housing your stock in that native country or region, with these providers, these warehousing companies that provide the logistics for doing that and getting it shipped out, is there an amount or a minimum that you have to commit to, a minimum amount of inventory, a minimum amount of transactions before you can go that route?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole ecosystem within the industry from a 3PL, and if you want to go for a super duper robotized Amazon-esque 3PL, then hey, you're going to need to be pumping thousands of orders a week. There's plenty of 3PLs. I mean, our 3PL, both in the UK and the EU and in the Netherlands, that we have in Global Ecommerce X, we've got our own 3PLs in both those places. Typically, we're servicing clients who have got, as a minimum, 50 to 100 pallets of goods, and as a maximum, more like 1,000 pallets. But in the past, and there's plenty of 3PLs that would go one pallet, one SKU, one tote, all of those would then depend on, so yes, there's an entire ecosystem of 3PLs that will run from anything from very little to, entire warehouses for some organizations which are much bigger than that.
Yeah. Well, that's good to know, because I think what a lot of e-commerce brands are going to be thinking about if they're considering going this route, if they're considering, providing their stock in those native countries, is going to be, it's going to be a new thing for these companies. And so they may have done their forecasting, the projections and their estimates, but you just never know. You never know how it's going to go, how many sales you're going to get in that country. So
no, you're definitely venturing into the unknown in some capacity, aren't you?
Yeah, for sure. So the ability to be able to get in there small and then scale up as needed, I think is going to be key. So that's good to know that, there's a lot of, like you said, those 3PLs that are going to be able to deal with that and handle a scale if you're going from small to large. Now, from a kind of a back end nuts and bolts perspective to making all of this happen, are there any tools or apps that you could recommend for a brand, to assist just in the selling, in the UK or the European Union?
Yeah, I mean, some online shopping stores, online shopping capacities are much better for international than others. I mean, Shopify Marketplace and Shopify Plus are very set up for global selling, for instance. Right. Shopify Marketplace is probably that good middle ground between the all singing all dancing one and for a new to export business. So certainly from those side of things, you're going to need, from an apps and tools perspective, you're going to need to be able to trade comfortably. You're going to need to be able to trade in the currency that you're selling in to give credibility to your capacity. So Shopify Plus will get that set up. So you're going to be selling in pound sterling in the UK, and broadly you're going to be selling in euros in the European Union.
Mm-hmm.
So for one way or another, you've got to get that stuff out. You've got to get that currency back into your native currency, back into dollars, and to be able to pay your bills and pay your way. So the first thing that you're definitely going to need is Payoneer or WorldPay, some kind of international currency trading facility that will very easily exchange funds from one currency to another, accept funds from those e-commerce suppliers, allow you to pay bills pay your tax bills and things like that.
Okay.
Secondly, you're going to need to understand the scale of the opportunity and what your market and your competitors are overseas. So you're going to need probably something like Helium 10 as a good starting point, relatively inexpensive compared to some of those things, not really agency level. So something like Helium 10 is a really good way of understanding how congested are these SKUs overseas. You might find your opportunity overseas is bigger than at home because there's less congestion on those SKUs on marketplaces. You might find that so some way of being able to analyze what those pieces look like, and then it's highly likely that even for a D2C seller, you're going to need to go cross marketplace. So you're going to need something to transfer your listings from what you've got at home into from an international perspective. So something like Expandly is a really good SaaS option for moving your listings internationally and moving them between marketplaces. Even if you're selling on, say, eBay in the US, you'll still need to convert your listings to be able to sell on eBay in the UK. Relatively quick and simple, but nonetheless, you'll still need to make those conversions. So those, I think, are really good ways of doing that. And then you're going to need to consider, listing languages. You're going to need to consider making sure you register for taxes, which are all part of the kind of website checkout piece. If you're selling on a marketplace, they'll give you a hand with that. But if you're doing it yourself, D2C, then some of these pieces you're going to need to do yourself. But you'll have understood where to do those because you're already well researched and prepared. So getting those pieces over the line are important. So I'd say those are probably the three go-to tools that will help you to start to get international, not just from a UK and EU perspective, but internationally in general.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's good to know. And those are some great tools. One of the things that I was also thinking about was how important, you mentioned a lot of just kind of key things when it comes to currency, when it comes to the taxes, regulations, the fulfillment aspect. Those are all key critical things. Another thing that, maybe a lot of brands may not have thought about or considered is specifically if you're dealing with some European countries outside of the UK that aren't natively English speaking, or they're speaking other languages. How important is that to consider when you're talking about handling these customers after the fact, as far as from a customer support standpoint? And is the language barrier a big concern? Or these days, I know with the plethora of translation apps and AI technologies, is that really a major factor?
Yeah, I mean, in some countries, it's no issue.
Okay.
You could start to export and just say, well, I'm going to deal with English-speaking countries first. And if you were in the States, that would give you quite a lot of options.
Yeah.
If you're really doing a structured plan to expand, then the thing to understand is that these cultural differences, they extend to optimization, to keywords, to ads, to all of those things are regional. And there's some countries, there's an enormous e-commerce opportunity in France and in Germany. Really, to make those work, you're going to need to translate. Now, up until November last year, the translation industry was somewhat it knew where it stood.
Okay.
If you wanted to do a quick translation, Google was getting better and better. If you wanted to do something more optimized, you would use native tongue translation, somebody who read it and knew how to optimize it in that country.
Mm-hmm.
Come end of November last year, when ChatGPT came on the scene, this is seriously disrupted, because who knows? This AI technology is doubling every month. Quite well where that leaves us in terms of optimizing in international language. Everyone's minds are blown, including the people who are developing that stuff. Right. So that's like that area of the industry is slightly changed now, but certainly an understanding that you're not in Kansas anymore, Toto. You're going to have to come to terms with the fact that if you want to sell in Europe, you need to present your goods compliant to be able to sell it in Europe and in a language someone's going to understand. Else, they're just not going to feel comfortable buying it. Yeah. So you can tickle around the edges to begin with, selling in dollars, maybe selling in pounds, but just tickle around the edges, drop shipping in from the US or from where you are. Mm-hmm. But to do it properly, you are going to need to attack some of those things in due course.
Yeah, that's really true. And I'm glad you said that. It's like initially may not be necessarily a big concern when you're just getting your feet wet, but as you're getting more into it, you're selling more and more. If you're really looking to expand, I see. You really have to, regionalize everything. Think about the translation and kind of go the whole nine for sure. Yeah, that totally makes sense. Now, Riki, as we get ready to wrap things up, I wanted to see if you could provide us with any examples of some e-commerce brands that you guys have either dealt with as a company or that you're just familiar with and generally that have been successful selling, expanding to the UK and the European markets, and what were some of their keys to success?
Yeah, and this follows on really nicely from the last piece here, because let's take the UK and the EU in terms of how should I go about attacking this? Do I just dabble around the edges, do the English speaking ones?
Yeah.
We are talking about 500 million web savvy, internet buying, knowledgeable people broadly, very high integration with online purchasing, especially since COVID.
Yeah.
And so just to give you there the scale of the opportunity, there's as many people here that we're talking about as in the United States, if that's where you're starting out. Yeah. There's an extraordinarily large opportunity. And some of the organizations, which I'll tell you about in a minute, have gone at this by saying, well, look, there's double the amount of people here. We should be able to double our business. It's feasible that we can double our business. Mm-hmm. And the answer to that is absolutely, you can double your business. Wow. See, that gives you an indication of the scale of the opportunity here. Do I kind of organize to develop some new products? Should I go and see if I can take 10 cents off my cost price? We're talking about doubling the opportunity. Mm-hmm. And we've worked with some organizations. Give you some examples of Exploding Kittens, the card game. Exponential growth in Europe. What do? They had to translate all of their cards to each individual country. These I don't know if you played the crazy card game as the Exploding Kittens, but this is US business. Mm-hmm. We assisted them with their UK and EU launch. They really went at it. They got all the products compliant, all their SKUs and barcodes organized. They translated the listings, the instruction manuals, the safety pieces, the safety device, the logos and bits and pieces like that. Got themselves well sorted, and they literally doubled the capacity of their North American operation. Wow. Another one that you might know, Manscaped. Again, their European growth exceeded their US growth.
Okay.
And with one more example that gives with some rationale there. Another organization called Sun Ninja that make these really cool spandex sun tents that you put in a backpack and on the beach. It's a really cool brand. Yeah. And what they understood was it's always summer somewhere, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, we've got this really seasonal business here where we're kind of feast and famine, and started the process of saying, well, hold on a second, it's really sunny in Australia. It's you know, with the shoulders of the season are longer in certain places in Europe. Where can we expand out from that part? But all of these organizations have really paid attention to regional requirements. They've translated carefully, and hey, look, they've had the capital to do that as well. And some people listening here will sort of think, well, hey, I can't afford to do it like that. But just to give you an example of the opportunity, they've optimized regionally. You know, they've got keywords, they've got ad campaigns of things going regionally. And as I say, they've taken advantage of different seasonality, different offers in marketplaces. I mean, take Amazon example. They might do a Prime Day or certain, you know, SKU type incentive deals and offers, banner type offers in the US. Well, they'll be different somewhere else. They're not the same in the UK. They won't be doing those campaigns in the same way internationally. They'll be organized regionally. And there's different marketplaces which are less congested. So those organizations are really good examples of ones that have really done a good job of getting prepared, understanding the regional differences, and then deploying to just a huge success. There's good examples from that side of things.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing those. Those are some awesome examples. Those I'm familiar with, at least Manscaped, Exploding Kittens, which were huge, and I didn't realize that, you know, they, you know, had such an explosive growth, no pun intended, in the UK and the European markets. But I could see why. I mean, they seem like they really definitely did their due diligence, and when you put everything into perspective, as you mentioned, you can really just almost, when you think about the amount of people, you know, in these regions, that you can think about, really, you know, it's incredible how you could possibly double your sales, double your growth. And, you know, that's, you know, a very enticing proposition to, I think, any of the e-commerce brands that are listening that haven't really even thought about this. So, I think there's really no better time than now to try to at least test the waters and you know, see what you can do if you're looking to really branch out into these different markets. Well, Riki, this has been an awesome conversation. I've definitely learned a lot myself. I know our listeners have as well. You know, and as we've said, this is definitely a lot of potential, and it's really just going to continue to grow as the whole world keeps globalizing and people are more and more familiar with what's going on and the interests that people have in other countries and in the products that are native to those countries. And so I think this is really just going to get bigger and bigger. But you know, lastly, before we do let you go, I always like to close things out and switch gears just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better. So if you don't mind sharing one closing fun fact about yourself that you think we'd be interested to know.
Well, I know a few weeks ago, I was chatting with a client, and I was talking through very similar questions that, you know, an e-commerce seller, and I explained that there were some you know, specific products that would be, you know, less successful, but the scale of the opportunity for your business in the UK and the EU was absolutely enormous. But I failed to ask that particular client what it was that they sold. And it wasn't as they kind of rolled into the fact that they built custom gun racks for pickup trucks.
Okay, gotcha.
And I had to kind of stop the conversation to say, well, unfortunately, there are some things in the States which are very American. There might be spurs for your boots, stars and striped flags, and unfortunately, the other one's probably going to be a gun rack for your pickup truck. So we had a good laugh over the irony of wanting to expand. And hey, we're only talking there about the UK and the EU. There's plenty of places around the world that this particular seller's products were very valid to sell. We were talking about the European market, but we don't get too many like that, if I'm honest. We don't get too many.
Right, I hear you. Well, yeah, that's interesting. I can definitely see how a product like that would, you know, definitely you'd have some challenges trying to sell that in the UK
yeah.
and European countries for sure. But this is not every product is like that. There's definitely a few.
Luckily not. Luckily
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I don't think your organization and agencies like yours would find too much work. But luckily, most products translate to different regions pretty easily. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah, good to know. Well, Ricky, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate sharing that fun fact. Lastly, before we do let you go, if you don't mind letting our listeners and our viewers know the best way to reach you if they have any further questions about expanding into the UK and European Union markets.
Yeah, sure. So Global E-commerce Experts does all of the things that we've talked about today. It does all of the preparation. It does all the compliance. It does all of those aspects. It's got 3PLs to put your stock in. Okay. It gives us a one-stop shop to grow your business internationally. So if you have any questions regarding what that looks like, the easiest way is just use your favorite browser to go to search for Global E-commerce Experts. We should come to the top, and you'll find easy ways to get in touch with the team to give you advice on the scope of the opportunity and indeed how to do it. We've grown over 2,000 e-commerce brands into the region in the last 7 or 8 years, and we're ready to help.
Okay, well, that's awesome. Well, that's good to know that we've got companies like you that can assist brands here in the U.S. to really go through this process, so you don't have to do it alone and do a guessing game. Because I could imagine over those 2,000 businesses that you guys have assisted, there was a lot of lessons learned that you guys have learned that you can apply and help new brands that are coming to you, prevent them from making the same kind of mistakes. So good to know. Yep. And thank you for sharing that. We'll have the link to your guys' website in the show notes. Lastly, thank you for joining us today, Ricky. I've learned a lot, as I said, and we appreciate you coming on to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast.
Oh, it's an absolute honor. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the E-commerce Marketing Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to rate, review, subscribe, and share it with everyone you know. Are you looking to take your digital marketing to the next level but are tired of wading through countless YouTube videos with unproven and untrusted marketing strategies? Well, we have the answer for you. The More Sales Every Month online digital marketing course. In this information-packed course, you will learn effective keyword research, link building, content marketing, and much more to attract and convert your site visitors into paying customers. Just go to moresaleseverymonth.com and sign up today for a low one-time fee. In addition to this power-packed course, if you would like to get access to a growing repository of digital marketing articles, PDFs, and ebooks, check out getosi.com/resources and opt in to get full access to our library of priceless marketing information to help you take your digital marketing to the next level.